right, what's that line? Know who you're talking to. When it comes to North Korea, this is what we're dealing with over there. A country that had no problem shooting one of its old soldiers in the back. The guy's going to be okay, but man, oh man. And this is what we're dealing with China helping us deal with these North Koreans. Of course, this is a memorable incident from the past. So again, if these are the guys we're talking to get the guys we want who have this weaponry to sort of ease up, you kind of get in the skinny of what's going down. Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer. Tony,
hey, Neil.
Neither looks like a duo you could trust, but what do you make of this?
This is, look, this guy showed a great deal of bravery based on the propaganda, Neil, that they give these guys. He was going in a situation where he probably believed the situation in South Korea is even worse than the North. The North portrays the South as if it's a war-torn country that is actually less civilized, if you can believe that, than the North. So this guy took a leap, and I think he's going to, you know, I've run defector operations. I've been through the CIA's defector settlement course and actually worked with these guys. Neil, you know, you heard in the news probably Hillary Clinton said she wanted to be president of another planet. This guy jumped off to a situation where he probably will think he's on another planet. It's going to take about 6 months for him to settle in. It's going to take a lot of therapy.
Yeah, he survived. We shouldn't say that he survived as he was really badly banged up.
Right.
They're discovering all sorts of health ills he has and parasites and all this. And
tapeworms the size of rattlesnakes.
Right. It gives you an inkling of what even the soldiers who supposedly you would think are given the best and the most hurting pups. What do you think?
Right. Well, yeah, look, this guy was one of the elite soldiers in what we call the Joint Security Area. And these also, Neil, remember, these guys are also used, even the elite soldiers are used as actual farm labor during harvest system. That's how small the manpower actually is for these folks. And think about this. This guy's the best fed, the best trained troop they have, and yet he was emaciated. He had all sorts of health conditions, and it just goes downhill from there. It then goes to the conscripts and then goes to the normal people. This is why you've heard stories accurately of families eating pets because they literally have no food to live off of. So this is a reminder of how stark the conditions are for the North Koreans.
Well, they can quickly turn on their own, which makes me wonder, we're negotiating or trying to have a civil conversation with these guys to take them the world off the ledge. But I'm also thinking of China and its past, Tiananmen Square and what have you, that these are the people we're trying to urge get the North Koreans off the ledge. How's that going to go?
Well, look, I don't know if you remember that, Neil, back in the late 80s, a Chinese officer defected right through the same area here. So this is not I mean, the Chinese themselves have had to defect from their government. So the Chinese are equally, I think, hideous regarding the fact that we have to both negotiate with them and hold them accountable. But note, Neil, during the time President Trump was there was no incidents, which tells me the Chinese told don't do anything stupid, which, you know, I think reflects well on the fact that President Trump is trying to put pressure on China to do something. I think if we work this correctly, we can continue to work something called enlightened self-interest. The North Koreans and the Chinese both have interests in maintaining the momentum of their economy. Right. And I think if you remind the Chinese especially that there are going to be consequences should any military effort start, you know, everybody's going to get wet. The Chinese are going to get the wettest, I believe, though.
You know, it's been a couple of months now since they've had a missile test launch, whatever you want to call it, Tony. And I'm beginning to wonder. I know this is the season where everyone goes back on the farm, tries to get the goods and all of that stuff, maybe even these soldiers. And maybe that could explain that. And I also heard these reports that 2 million have lost their lives due to famine there and what have you. Right. Then you got to wonder, they're really up against the wall.
And they are. And the Chinese, I think, has reminded them of the fact that, you know, one of the things on the table, Neil, is limiting the amount of fuel going into North Korea from China. That's a huge issue. I mean, any given time, the North Korean military has about 30 days of fuel, which would limit their ability to conduct any offensive operations. But beyond that, just helping their economy work. So they are the most fragile economy. But again, the great leader, could care less as long as is taken care of. But so I think we have to continue to make this personal about consequences to regarding his bad acts. And I think the Chinese will continue to have to work on that with us.
Incredible story. I'm glad this guy's going to be all right. But man, oh man. Colonel, thank you very much.
Hey,
happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks.
All right, in the meantime, you know, this is sort of like the Frozen thing again, right? They won't let go. Hillary Clinton is now blaming Barack Obama for the loss that no one saw coming last year. Donna Brazile now questioning the election outcome a year after the fact. It's a mess. It's time to move on here, but they won't after this.
My question to you is, was it a legitimate election? Does it count?
My personal view is that it was not a legitimate election.
So it doesn't count?
Chris, remember, I'm the campaign manager of Al Gore in 2000. And where, as you well know, the Supreme Court decided this election will always have an asterisk by.
Which I guess is Donna Brazil's way said doesn't count. You got her, you got Hillary Clinton reliving, rehashing, again, reobsessing over something that's been more than a year ago now. Ashley Pratt on when it's time to say enough is enough. Are we at that stage? Because I wonder in some cases whether we are or ever will be.
I think we're at the time where it's okay for Democrats as a party to be introspective, and I think that needs to happen because we don't see any leadership coming from the Democratic Party. We see pretty much Bernie Sanders taking everything under his own control right now, and that's because there's a vacuum of leadership in the Democratic Party. So this is giving running room for people like Donna Brazil and Hillary Clinton to be out there peddling their books and saying, hey, this is why 2016 happened, coming up with more and more excuses and more fodder. Now, with that said, this isn't helping the Democratic Party at all, who is trying to recover from huge losses in 2016, gearing up for 18 and 20. Again, with that vacuum in leadership and with their platform pretty much in shambles because you've got to fight between the progressive wing of the party and the moderate base of the party. I don't know where they really go from here, and I'm not sure that these messages, again, from Brazil and from Clinton are really helping. And I think the Democratic Party really needs to learn here that the Clintons are a thing of the past and just kind of move away from it and let them do what they're going to do.
They are, and I understand that argument, but the approach, for example, that Bill Clinton took, a moderating approach, should not be a thing of the past. And the reason why I mentioned that is Jamie Dimon, the guy who heads J.P. Morgan Chase, is on the wires right now saying that he expects a new U.S. president in 2021, and he advised Democrats to come up with a pro-free enterprise agenda for jobs and economic growth, and that kind of candidate, speaking to the Economic Club of Chicago, could do the trick and get the White House back. What do you make of that? Because it's counterintuitive to the way Democrats are going now, hard left, uber progressive.
Right. So you've got, again, the Elizabeth Warrens and the Bernie Sanders who are representing the very progressive wing of the party, which, again, pretty much
pro-free enterprise, those guys.
Correct. Which pretty much hijacked the moderate wing of the party, which should have been a shoo-in for Clinton's candidacy in 2016, which ended up not being the case. So we're seeing a trend of the base of the Democratic Party to be more progressive. But you also saw a lot of moderates come out and say this doesn't represent the platform of the party. And I think they would be wise and could actually win a lot of seats back in 18 and then maybe the presidency in 20 if they focus on a more moderate and free enterprise agenda.
But they're going to have a very crowded field, Ashley, right?
Yes.
I mean, they could have like a few dozen. I don't think I'm exaggerating, entering that race. Now, that could complicate things, right? I mean, because right now it would be free and clear.
Well, yeah, look what happened in 16 with Republicans. We started with a whole cast of characters and ended up with, I guess, the main character of the reality show that became 2016, which was Donald Trump.
Well, that
but
was
at the
16.
Same time,
this could be double that.
Exactly. So what I think here, the Democrats really need to get on board with messaging if they're looking to win elections again in 18 and in 20. They need to come up with a platform that works. They need to come up with a winning messaging and strategy because right now they're not playing to a large base of Americans, not even their base, because a lot of people are seeing the way the economy impacts them, and they're very pro-business, they're very pro-free enterprise, they're free trade. So we're seeing a lot of these things and how they impact the American people. Now, with that said, if we look back at Virginia and what we can learn from the results there, it's that Ralph Northam, who was running for governor, was a pretty moderate Democrat and was able to win in a purple state. So if Democrats are smart, they should look at more moderate candidates like Northam, who voted for Bush twice and who's, military background and more moderate, that they might have a chance at winning some of these seats back, especially in swing districts and in swing states.
Yeah, it just can't be about being against the other guys, as Republicans found out in a number of elections against Barack Obama. Ashley Pratt, thank you very, very much. Good seeing you again. Happy Thanksgiving. All right. In the meantime here, a lot of people say these tax cuts that Donald Trump and Republicans want to do are the largest in history. That, of course, is not the case, but they do have some Reagan-esque flair. Here's the big difference. Ronald Reagan had some personal capital invested in them and used it, shall I say, liberally. Why that worries his economic Svengali, Art Laffer, because maybe Donald Trump does not? All right, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, their signature legislation just could be tax cuts, certainly very big. There are a lot of people arguing back and forth whose would be bigger in that event. The bottom line is this: Ronald Reagan personally championed the cause. The pressure is on this president to do the same for his Reagan economic advisor, Art Laffer. Now, Art, you remind me a lot of times that Ronald Reagan was quite involved in the details of this. We normally think he was standoffish and not really into the weeds or whatever you want to call it. He actually was at keeping score. Refresh my memory.
Yeah, well, he was very, very focused on tax cuts. In fact, he ran on tax cuts. That's what his whole signature issue was. And in fact, we had the tax cuts in 1981. Unfortunately, we phased them in. But then the real big one was 86, where we dropped the highest rate to 28%, cut the corporate rate, got rid of all these exemptions, exclusions, had 2 tax rates out of 14. That was it. And that was the signature event, and it led to enormous prosperity. And Donald Trump is doing pretty well, too, by the way, on economics. I have nothing to fault him on in this stuff.
Well, do you think in order to close the deal, given the wind he has at his back with the economy and the markets and all this, should be, open and shut case here? But I know how the Senate works. I know the numbers are a lot different. I know the times are a lot different. But should he be doing more of what Reagan was doing, or is this in good place?
Yeah, whatever he should do the best he can to get this bill passed. This bill should pass. Now, when we had it in 1980, 81, the president had a little wind at his back, and he was a sympathetic figure, so it wasn't nearly as difficult for us to get the bill passed in 1981 as it is now. But Trump should just do all he can to get it passed, and once passed, I mean, he's done a great job on deregulation. He's got a new Fed chairman. He's done all sorts of stuff. He tried to get Obamacare repealed, and the Democrats were 100% against it, and unfortunately enough Republicans were against it that we didn't get it passed. But, he should make sure this one gets passed if he can.
I was thinking of you when I saw this news flash a few minutes ago about Jamie Dimon. The J.P. Morgan Chase CEO says that he expects to see a new U.S. president in 2021, but he says the way the Democrats can close that deal is picking up pro-free enterprise agenda of jobs and economic growth. Some of the prominent candidates you hear about are not of that mindset, or don't seem to be. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. I hope Jamie Dimon is right, but I just don't understand it. I mean, there hasn't been a pro-growth agenda Democrat since Bill Clinton. And before that, John F. Kennedy. And before that, the Democrats were the pro-growth people. They were the tax cutters, the spending restraint, the sound money, free trade people. And that's what we need. We need pro-growth people who want to cut your tax rates, free trade, sound money, minimal regulations, and get this economy going to provide the prosperity we all want so badly, Neil. It's just desperate.
Does it
I don't know why the Democrats are so bad.
Does it worry you, Art, the way, and I always think this is the way the media frames it, tax cuts are always skewed to the rich. That's what they say. I mean, you break this down, it's simply not that way. But I know where they're coming from. They see the corporate rates that are deemed permanent at the expense of individual rates that are not. But I know this game is played. But I did want to get your take about if these cuts come into fruition the way the president wants, the way the Republican wants, they could argue about when they take effect, et cetera. Is it your sense that this is going to grow the economy? The reason why I mention it is Morgan Stanley, another Wall Street firm, is saying it will be like a short-term nicotine or sugar high effect, and then it will kind of peter out. What do you make of that?
I think they're wrong. I mean, I think this will be a very solid startup of a very substantial growth in the U.S. economy. I think it was Goldman Sachs that said they were raising their forecast of growth substantially because of it. Anyone who sees tax cuts records, the Kennedy go-go 60s, big tax cuts, rapid growth. Then the Harding-Coolidge 1920s, it was called the Roaring 20s. And then you got the Reagan era, which was tax cuts, pro-growth, and the Clinton era.
But
I mean,
on
Clinton
the
was a big
personal
tax
side,
cutter.
these aren't big. On the corporate corporate side, they're certainly big.
Well, you know, when corporate rates are out of line, you got to focus on corporate rates. When personal rates are out of line, you got to. When we came into office, Neil, the highest marginal income tax rate on individuals was 70%. For goodness sakes,
You're
I mean
talking
that's
about when
really,
Reagan
really
came into
high.
office. Not Millard Fillmore, Reagan.
Not Millard Fillmore too, by the way. When the Democrats, I mean, when Millard Fillmore came in, when Harding and Coons came in, the highest rate was 77%. I mean, that's outrageous. It makes no sense. They cut it to 24%.
So a little less wiggle room here, but substantial.
Yeah, you've got a lot less wiggle room.
Right.
But you know, cutting it from 35 to 20 will really get this economy going much faster than 3%. Believe me when I tell you, it could be much, much higher.
All right, we shall see. Very good seeing you, my friend. Have
Neil,
a great Thanksgiving.
happy Turkey Day to you, by the way.
To
It's
you
fun
as
being
well.
with you, Neil.
To you as well. All right, well, hold the stuffing. Just give me the stuff. How did this become Thanksgiving? We're going to discuss with Jen Hex right after this. All right, it's a Turkey Day version of Gen Hex, which a lot of people think of that generation, but not me. No, me.
Be nice.
All right, I don't know if you heard about this, but BJ's is closed for Thanksgiving Day. It's not among those, all my young friends here, that's staying open that day. 11 years they've stuck to this. Well, competitors have come and gone being open that day just to let their workers know we value your time with your families. Now on Friday, get back to work. Anyway, we've got attorney Christy Gunzig here. We got your world producer, Andrew White, your world audio tech, Dion Baya, and the Wall Street Journal's Jillian Melchior. All right, Jillian, begin with you on the CEO of that fine establishment saying, Neil, there's sometimes things that are more important than sales on a Thanksgiving day.
Yep, and that is marketing. I think this is absolutely the right branding choice. America's a little bit anti-corporate right now, a little bit anti-capitalist right now, especially among millennials, and I think this sends the right message.
You're just anti-everything.
Millennials are, not me.
All right.
But I think this sends the right message that they're putting their employees first, that they're being responsible and ethical, and that's something that really resonates with my generation.
And they've been doing it for a while, which
have.
is we
Yes.
made that point, and so it's not like they're
Because I
just.
said that in the lead. 11 years.
But they're not
That they've been doing.
They're not bandwagoning it. So why is it always the other guy? Why do you have to do that? The only disappointing thing is like BJ's has the great like samples for like all the food. So
right?
if you're spending,
Well, they do that. It's Costco. I go to Costco. They do that too. They have the samples.
They do it
just
all.
force
But
it
that's
down
like a good
to-
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Like
Now, some of these guys are open on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but I think
so
it's-
are they missing something by not being open?
I don't
now,
think
he
that-
told me, the CEO told me, it's no big deal. We'd rather lose some sales than do this, subject our employees to this.
I don't think they're missing out on a lot because most people are at home with their families as they should be. And you have Black Friday the next day, which is when people are really ramping up to
And
hit
by the
the
way,
stores.
they're open bright and early, 6 or 7 a.m. the next day.
I think
so.
for Thanksgiving to survive in the next generation, you need to have it be about the family, and it's good to be able to.
What if you don't like your family?
Well, then you're still going to go and
You'll
smile
go
and
someplace else.
And you need to be able to have
BJ's,
people.
you'll go someplace else.
Yeah, you need to be able to have people get together and have a family unit, do
Okay.
cordial things, or not take part in a riot trying to get a TV that could be sold out.
Yeah, that always scares me when I see
People
that.
die in Black Friday,
I know.
tramplings and stuff.
It's a little horrifying. Like I still have trouble grasping
You know what's
the notion of
really sad too? They always now they put like a cop or a guard who's just like slow down. People, they get stopped.
It's like remain calm.
Yeah,
as well, and
but I don't understand why. It's so hard. You know, we told them, and then there's people fighting and beating.
Lighten up, kids.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there's a new superhero movie out, Justice League. Now, it's considered disappointing because it made a little less than $100 million. Still a lot of money. But a lot of the problem seems to be we're getting a lot of these movies. And they're one after another. There are going to be a lot more superhero movies, a lot more of these leagues of them all in one picture. I don't know, Andrew. I think we're kind of superheroed out.
We're superheroed out. A lot of these movies are a little bit too serious. I think they take themselves a little too seriously.
That is why the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Marvel movies, the Thor,
Spider-Man was a funny.
Well,
Very funny.
They're realizing to turn the
one that
template
just
into
came
a
out
comedy
was
and an action movie.
Yeah, you don't want to go too far. I understand that people are aficionados of this stuff. But you don't want to be so
Well, there's
serious.
only so much you can do in a 2-hour movie. You have stuff on like Netflix that can explore things. And
I
that
think
works.
that's actually it. I think people are like movied out in general. That's not where the interesting storylines are happening. I love Jessica Jones. I'm not a big superhero person. I'm not a comic book nerd, but I love loved following that entire storyline, and that's because it had a little bit more room to flesh
And
out.
there's a very interesting dichotomy there where, you can't explore character development too much in a 2.5 hour movie, but then you get on Netflix, there's a new show out called The Punisher, and The Punisher's dealing with soldiers coming home from war and very serious topics, and people, it's very popular at the time.
Comic book heroes.
I know, but
Just
the
step
thing
back.
is, when you deal with them
realize these
seriously and
aren't
take
real,
them,
what
are you talking about? Of course they're real. There's Spider-Man right now. Oh my, get out of the way.
Christy wants to talk.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, nice of you.
I think that, you have a built-in fan base for these.
Yeah.
So the acting is average, the graphics are average. It's not anything new.
And
They're
it takes
all the
longer to
same.
introduce each character.
Yeah, but you know what?
Right.
Also, also there's the back thing to that is that they have an inherent fan base no matter what. So they can tell the fan base to go screw off, and the fan base will still show up. And they're trying to get the new people.
I think they're worn this out.
When's the superhero movie going to be for your stuff? Like the financial factor, the superhero that you
Nah,
have.
you must.
And you love the star. You love the star.
Like you busting into
This
the.
is a lovable character.
No, you'll bust into the with humor. You'll bust into the treasury. They're printing the money, and you're going to.
He's not like the Kool-Aid guy. It's like, the wall.
They're tempted to use that guy. This guy.
Put me down as a maybe.
Yeah.
That would be a good superhero.
I would definitely watch
Yes.
this.
Yeah, guys. Yeah.
Kool-Aid
Okay,
man.
good.
Right.
Make fun of me. Yeah, let's go after Gramps on this one. Pringles is testing Thanksgiving flavored chips, and Reynolds Kitchen has released a recipe for flaming hot Cheetos turkey. Dion, I cannot believe it.
I love this.
I can't either. This is what we got, the Pringles Thanksgiving dinner. I don't understand if this is supposed to replace the turkey
Well, wait a
dinner.
minute, they have the different flavored
So
chips.
what we got here, Neil,
Okay.
it's like home shopping. What we have here is if you open this up, each one is a different flavor. So you have here, hold
Is
on.
it like a chocolate box?
So you have like turkey stuffing, green bean casserole, mac and cheese, cranberry sauce, mashed potato, cream corn,
Well, you have
pumpkin
this
pie.
instead of the standard.
But
meal?
now what you do is you take these and they have recipes on the back. So then you can take like a turkey stuffing, mashed potato. You can get So that's what I don't
Would
understand.
any of you entertain having something like that?
I think
Yes.
it's adorable and it's kitschy, but I wouldn't actually give this to anybody. I actually brought instead what I would be giving for you guys. I brought cake pops. I made them.
I love that.
for you guys.
You didn't do that.
They're not turkey
I'm totally going to try to do
No, look at this.
I can tell where this what this
This is
is.
some mac and cheese. I love this. I'm a
try it.
connoisseur of weird
Beautiful.
potato
Mac and cheese.
chips.
So if you look at the template, I don't understand.
It's awesome.
But see, that's the thing.
looks-
Is it supposed to be an
All right.
appetizer, or is it supposed to be as a
you
substitute?
Look,
I don't know.
it is the perfect thing for the day
Wait
after
a minute, I'm
Thanksgiving.
getting a message from my heart surgeon, Neil. Everything in moderation.
It isn't very healthy.
No, it is not.
It-
A lot more
this tastes
after
like a-
this. Stick around. We're going to steal all this food and keep it for ourselves after
It
this.
just tastes like a Pringle.
All right, now they got some splaining to do. Congress wants some answers from Uber after the company reportedly paid a ransom, then covered up for over a year a hack on some 57 million of its users, even their drivers. Deidre Bolton with the very, very latest. Deidre.
Yeah, Neil, Uber was hacked October 2016. The then CEO, Travis Kalanick, found out a month later, didn't tell authorities such as the New York Attorney General or the FTC, but he did pay hackers $100,000 to destroy the data and keep news of the hack quiet. Now, he was replaced, the CEO, for many reasons. Those who wish to be kind say he lacked maturity for that CEO role. His critics say he does not have the same sense of ethics at all as the average person. The new CEO, he started 2 months ago. He has such a huge cleanup job in front of him. So he found out about the hack, the payoff. He alerted the FTC. He alerted the New York AG, as you're supposed to do. And then he also put out this statement, which says, none of this should have happened. I will not make excuses for it. We are changing the way we do business, putting integrity at the core of every decision we make. New CEO also fired the two people responsible for handling that breach. So one is a lawyer and one was the head of security. Now, in the meantime, you mentioned that big number, Neil. 50 million riders globally were affected, 7 million drivers. So what was hacked, names, email addresses, phone numbers of customers around the world. Then for the drivers, of the 7,600,000 driver's licenses, U.S. only, were taken. Now, what was not hacked, according to Uber. Social security card numbers, credit card information, and trip location details. But numerous attorneys general, including Eric Schneiderman, are opening probes. You mentioned congressmen as well, including one or two even from New Jersey now, starting to look into this. And, you know, Uber's plan was to go public. It's one of the biggest startups in the U.S. I don't know if this is going to affect that. Neil, back to you.
All right. I can see the distinction then between other companies that delayed a response and this one that might have prevented that response from getting out there
Delayed
in the first
and
place.
paid.
All right. Thank you, Deidre Bolton. We'll have more to this. So the president's tweeting that UCLA kid's dad again, still angry. The NFL mess, still festering. Sexual harassment claims, still spreading. Media bigwigs still falling, congressional bigwigs fast following, and more than a year after a big election, some people still shouting. So many, so angry, so constant. It's not that any of these are unimportant matters, but the only things that matter. Try telling that to 58 families who will have one less chair at their Thanksgiving table this year after that rampage in Las Vegas last month. Or the more than 24 families in Texas trying to do the same after that church shooting a couple of weeks ago. Or the 8 families, most not even from this country, still trying to reconcile a madman running over their loved ones on a thoroughfare in New York, leaving a hole in their lives that reverberates worldwide. Forgive them if they don't share your fury at the NFL. Forgive them if they can't get too excited one way or the other over tax cuts. Forgive them if the deduction for state and local taxes means little and the cursing on both sides of the issue means less. I'm sure they're just as shocked over wave after wave of celebrities and public figures whose careers seem to be imploding by the day. I just think they're in a bigger state of shock, coming to grips with loved ones who are never coming back any day. We'd be wise to remember that the things that consume us in life shouldn't make us forget what is still important in life and for which we should be grateful in life, namely life, living. If only we'd listen to the ones who have lost so much,